Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and actually experience some rain for once. It's kind of a nice change. I really do like the rain, though. My name is Christie Wilson. I'm a software engineer at Google, and right now I'm working on the container tools team, but generally I am super passionate about developer tools. To tell you a bit about myself, in a past life, I've worked on tools for AAA game titles. So that includes system testing and load testing for Call of Duty. I've worked on configuration management for distributed systems, and right now I'm working on tools for container-based systems like Kubernetes and Knative. So something that all of these projects have had in common is that developer documentation has been super important. And why is developer documentation important? It's because the software that we work on doesn't exist in a vacuum. So whether you're talking about an open source project or something you're working on inside a company, the software that you write can be a dependency for another team or another piece of software. And you depend on other pieces of software. And your software is going to have bugs. And you're going to need to add new features. And ideally, the people that are using your software can fix the bugs when they find them. Or they can even contribute back new features. But sadly, in reality, we have barriers around our teams that makes it hard for people to contribute. The good news, though, is that we can break down a lot of those barriers by writing developer documentation. So that's what this talk is about. It's about docs for developers. So docs for users are also extremely important, but today we're going to talk about how to write great developer-facing documentation and why you should care about it. Now, to help us along this journey, I want to introduce my friend Jazz. So Jazz isn't on your team, but she uses your software, and she has a little bit of free time, so she wants to contribute back. So we're going to look at Jazz's experiences as she encounters your developer documentation. And as we do that, think about the projects that you work on, and think about whether they would measure up. We'll be looking at 3 kinds of docs. The first one is issues. So this is feature requests, bug reports, that kind of thing. Then we're going to talk about the contributing guide and the development guide. And we're going to finish with a surprise, 3rd kind of documentation. It's something that you might not even have been thinking about as docs, but it is. So first of all, let's look at issues. So Jazz is looking at your issue tracker. And there are a couple reasons why this might happen. Maybe she found a bug. She wants to see if you know about it already. But let's say that she's looking for something that she can work on because she wants to contribute back. So this means that she needs something that has enough context that as a new contributor to the project, she can ramp up and dive in right away. But unfortunately, this is the kind of issue that she sees. This is a classic pattern. This is basically, I wrote the issue, so I remembered to do the thing. And to the person who wrote it, it makes perfect sense. But to somebody who's new, there's no information here. She also sees issues like this. And this is another classic pattern. So this has more information in it, but the information is all insider jargon. So the person who wrote it understands what it means. It's possible that the other people on the team know exactly what this is about. But to someone that's new, their only option would be to go and find one of the people on the team and start asking them in person about what this is about. And let's contrast that with a much better issue. So something like this, even at a glance, there's already a lot that, even not knowing what the project is, we can kind of grab onto and start to understand. First of all, there's structure. And then we can see that there are links, and there's example output. So we start off in a much better place. And let's look at what could happen at this point. So you have someone who wants to contribute to your project. In the best case, she's going to find something that she can start working on right away and get involved. In the worst case, she's going to get frustrated and give up, and you've lost a contributor that you might not even know was there. And then in kind of a middle ground case, she might have to reach out and ask somebody, like, what is an issue that I could get started on, or what do all these terms mean? And why is that so bad? It might not be bad, depending on your project, but if you want the project to scale, and if you also, particularly if it's an open source project, then that really is bad, because the person who's interested in contributing might not be in the same time zone as you. And so suddenly, questions that could take just minutes to answer will stretch across days. And is your potential contributor going to want to do that? So if you want to avoid this, there are 3 things you need to include in every issue that you write. And this applies to feature requests, and it applies to bug reports as well. So the first one, what does the software do right now? And this is a great place where you can link to code, you can provide snippets, you can include screenshots. Secondly, what do you want it to do? So what would it be like if the bug wasn't there or if the feature was added? And then lastly, how can I reproduce this? So what environment setup do I need? What commands can I run? That kind of thing. And most issue trackers will help you out here because they usually have templates. Like, for example, this is a GitHub template that you can add to your project. And you can add sections for all the information that you need. And it'll be a reminder to you when you open issues of what you want to include. And it's also a signal to people who are reporting issues about what information you're looking for. And specifically, if you're using GitHub, there are some conventions you can use around labels. So you can use labels like help wanted or good first issue to point new contributors in the right direction so that they can look at the issues that are best for them to get started with. OK, so let's say that Jazz had a pretty good experience with your issues. She found something that she wants to get started on, and she's pretty sure she knows how to fix it, too. But there's still some things she needs to know. Like, she needs to know, how does she run the tests? How does she know the thing is actually working? Maybe the software also runs as a service, so she wants to know how can she run it and poke it manually. And she needs to know what your workflow is for handling pull requests. But when she goes to your repo looking for this information, this is what she sees. There's a README, and the only thing in it is information about how to build the project, but nothing else. But she's looking specifically for the second kind of documentation that I'm going to talk about, which is the contributing guide and the development guide. And what can happen at this point? We have a person who wants to work on your project and has a fix. If she can figure out what the process is, she is going to verify her fix and open a pull request, and you're going to get the benefit of her contribution. Again, this is another place, though, where she might get frustrated and give up. Or she might just decide, I'm going to open the pull request anyway. Hopefully, automation will catch the problems. And maybe it does. Maybe some tests fail. Ideally, it's obvious what's wrong, and she can fix it. Or maybe she gives up again. Or maybe she has to wait for a maintainer to come along and start walking her through the debugging process and helping fix the bugs. But fortunately, if we provide a contributing guide and a development guide to our potential contributors, we can work around a lot of that. So the first file is often a markdown file called contributing.md. And this is a standard that tools like GitHub recognize. And then the other one has kind of naturally split off from the contributing.md and is less standard, and that's the development.md. You can use the same file for both of them if you want, but there are 2 pieces of information that you need to provide. The first one, the contributing guide, is about how to contribute to your project. So, like, what is your process? The second one, the development guide, is about what kind of activities a maintainer or a contributor would be doing while working on this project. So how do we write a great contributing guide? Let's look at some tweets from the community. So Matt from Sensu asks, what makes you happy to contribute to an open source project? And Trevor from AWS specifically points out it's the attitude. A warm, welcoming, collaborative attitude is what makes him really happy to contribute to a project. And on the other side, we have this question from Sai that I think is really interesting, because we often point people who are new to software development at open source projects. We're like, this is a great way for you to get started in your career. But then they go to those projects, and they can't figure out how to work on them. And then they feel like it's too complicated, and maybe software development isn't for them. So the first key to writing a great contributing guide is to show people that you do have this warm, collaborative atmosphere, and that you really want everybody's contributions. So be as friendly as you can. And then from there, what you might want to include, you can talk about how does a person open an issue. If a person has an idea for a feature to add to your project, how do they go about suggesting that? You can talk about particular contributions you need. Maybe your project could really use a UX perspective. And then from there, you can talk about things like how do they get involved with conversation, like what Slack do they join, what mailing list, and all of that. OK, so before we talk about the development guide, I have a question. Who here uses Go? Cool, okay. And so of the people who use Go, who builds and tests their projects only by running the commands go test and go build? Okay, already know one hand. Okay, so you never have to run a script on top of that. There's never a make file. There's no bash involved. Okay, cool. So the point is that no matter how standard the languages and tools are that we're using, our projects are all slightly different. So if you want people to be able to work on them, you have to tell them how the projects work. And that's what the development guide is all about. It's about getting the process that you as a maintainer do every day out of your head and into a markdown file so that other people can learn from it. So how do you write a great development guide? The first key is to assume as little as possible. So if this is inside of a company and you know that like everybody's using GitHub or something like that, then you don't have to explain how GitHub works. But if this is external, then you really don't know what kind of experiences your potential contributors have. So even people who are really experienced might be used to different tools than you. So for example, Jazz uses GitHub all the time. But her friends Andy and Wendy come from more enterprisey backgrounds, and they have never used GitHub. But their contributions would still be super valuable, and you still really want them. So start as simple as possible in your development guide. You might want to start with something like, how do you fork? And then from there, how do you set up a development environment? And how do you iterate? How would you know if your thing is working correctly? How would you run the tests? All of that. And if you're looking for an example of a development guide that's pretty good, I recommend the one at Knative Serving. So you can see in the Getting Started section, it starts really basic. It's like, this is how you get a GitHub account. And then this is how you set up SSH. And then from there, it gets into how do you set up a Kubernetes cluster, and then gets into how to iterate on the project itself. OK, so now we're at the last kind of docs. It's a surprise. Can anybody guess what kind of documentation I'm going to talk about? Tests. Tests are very important, not what I'm going to talk about. Comments, also super important. I would say comments and doc strings and readmes, all very valuable, but I'm going to talk about something different. So let's say that Jazz found a bug in your library. And she's pretty sure the bug is that this number is 5. She thinks it should be 0. But she wants to understand, why is it 5? So she runs a blame. And then this is the commit message that she sees. That's the whole thing. Just fix tests. So the third kind of documentation I'm going to talk about is commit messages. Commit messages are like the secret documentation for your project. If they're done right, they can be really useful. And let's look at what can happen here. So we have someone who is pretty sure about a fix for a bug. If she's confident, she's going to fix it for you. That's great. If she can't figure out why that number was 5, she might actually just give up, and she might just hack around it. And then not only have you lost a contribution, but you don't even know there was a bug there to start with. Or maybe she's going to open an issue, and then you have to triage it, and maybe there'll be some back and forth, and something that could have been fixed really quickly is suddenly taking days or weeks. And when we look at commit messages, this is often what we see. We see things like, fix missing logs. But why were they missing? We see, bump the timeout to 20 minutes. But why 20? Why not 30? Why did it have to change in the first place? All of that information is missing. And let's look at some discussion in the community. So Dan Abramov from Facebook asks, what is the main thing that holds you back from contributing to React? And the overwhelming answer is that the code isn't approachable. It's really interesting. We can talk a lot about writing clean code and code maintainability, but actually commit messages can help you out a lot here. For example, this commit message, I would say, is really good. Now, without even knowing what project we're talking about, we can understand a lot just from reading the message. And that's because it has structure. So it starts with the subject line, then it gets into explaining that there's a particular commit that introduced the bug, and what the bug is. And then it explains how this commit is going to fix that bug. So even if this code was actually really complicated, this commit message makes it more accessible and understandable. But let's contrast that with some of the other commit messages we see. This is a classic. So the commit message for this is logris use full timestamp. And then if you go and look at the code change, you can see that yes, we are using the full timestamp. But why? Or this, change default action to in place. So we look at the code and we can see, yes, it used to be replace, now it's in place. But why? Why did we change it? What will happen if I undo it? Is this going to cause a bug? Or was this just an aesthetic thing and somebody liked it better? All of that information is missing. And now this one is very similar. So this is talking about adding a short ID. And in the change, you can see that we're passing this short flag. But we can go on a little bit of a journey with this. So we start out at the commit. We don't find what we're looking for. Since this is in GitHub, we can go from the commit to the pull request. And this is another place where maybe we'll find an explanation of why this change was made. In this particular case, we don't, but we do find a link to the issue. And then we're lucky because the issue actually goes into a lot of detail about why this short ID is being used. So we do find the information that we're looking for. But we had to context switch several times to get there. And if we can't find what we're looking for, our last chance is to go and find the person who made the change and ask them. And we have to hope that they actually want to reply to us, and that they're in the same time zone, and that they even remember why they made that change. And most of the time, we won't bother doing that unless it's something super important. So we might have to go forward having no idea why the number was 5. And it's bad enough when we look at it like this. But then when you look at it in the context of a larger investigation where you're maybe looking at multiple commits and trying to understand them, then this becomes a really big cognitive burden. It's a lot of stuff for you to hold in your head just to figure out maybe one small thing. And contrast that with the commit message that we were looking at. All the information we need is potentially right here. So great commit messages really save people a lot of time and effort. So how do you write great commit messages? Start with the subject line. And then something that I found really useful is I always try to aim for 2 paragraphs of information in every commit message. And that's 2 paragraphs that explain why I made the change, not what the change is. 2 paragraphs might seem like a lot, but this is the information that we really need to know about every commit. What is the problem that we're solving? Why did this commit have to be happening in the first place? Why is this the best approach to solve it? It's really rare that there's only one way to solve a problem, so why did we choose this one? And what other ones did we decide not to go with? Are there any side effects for this commit? And what future work remains after this? So the point that I'm trying to get at is that if you want people who aren't already intimately familiar with your project to contribute, whether we're talking about open source contributors, we're talking about someone who's brand new to your team, or we're talking about someone that's just a couple desks down from you but doesn't usually work on your project, then you need great docs. And beyond those situations, writing really good docs for your software like this actually makes software a better place to be. Because having docs like this makes your projects inherently remote friendly. And then people who have different lifestyles than you, who maybe work different hours or live in a different part of the world, can contribute without having to track you down and ask you for more information. They can find what they need in your docs. So how do you do this? I think the number one thing for me that's really helped is that I try to use my own developer docs as much as I can. So whenever I'm going to do something and I think a contributor might also need to do that, I go and check the docs and I make sure that they exist, 1, and then 2, that they're up to date, because they do fall behind. The second is to get used to the idea of a complete submission, including docs. So I think we're all kind of starting to adjust to the idea that when you're making a code change, for that to be complete, you really need to include some test changes as well. So I'm suggesting that we also expect there to be documentation. So you need all 3 of those things to form the complete package. Because especially if you're adding a new feature, then probably you want people to know how they actually use that feature and how it works. And sometimes there's going to be developer docs that need to be updated. There are so many places where we can lose potential contributors or just slow them down with unnecessary barriers. But with a little bit of effort in our developer-facing docs, we can make their process way easier and get them ramped up in our projects quickly. So let's write great developer-facing docs and really empower people to join our projects. Thank you.